So welcome to Unilever, and I think Liv is up first. I will hand over to her.
Yeah, so just as an intro to me, I guess, I'm currently in the talent team at Unilever. I've been here just over a year. My main role is to support the UK talent advisors with any operational activity, so posting vacancies, interviews, coordinating compliance work, and then a few other projects outside of this. So the main bit that I'll be going through is communicating your skills, creating applications, and preparing for your interview. So the CV tends to be a base of any kind of application. So a CV provides a bit of a detailed insight into you, showcases your skills, experience, and is a bit of evidence of any written communication skills as well. So I've just put a few points just to make sure you include them all on your CV. You'll be surprised at how many of these things are missed. So the first one is your name and address. It's always good to put a name on a CV when you're looking at it. The next one is your contact details, so an email address, a phone number. You'll be surprised at how many CVs we actually get that don't have that. So it's really annoying for our team when we get a really good candidate on a CV and we can't reach out to them. So make sure you always include that when writing a CV, application, whatever it is. The next few ones I'll go into a little bit more detail, but you've got your personal statement, you've got your employment history, your training and education, and then your skills and achievements. And next slide. So with your personal statement, this highlights you as a candidate and why you're a good fit for the role. So try and make sure it's short, snappy little paragraph or a few bullet points. Ask someone to check it for you as well. It's always kind of good to get someone else to highlight your good points. I think it's always hard to think about what you want. For like what you're good at yourself, I think is the main thing. Your personal statement is the first part in your CV to really sell yourself and highlight all your personal qualities, your current journey, and include all your transferable skills. My main tip on this one is try to not use too many common buzzwords. So words like hardworking or motivated, just try to keep it a little bit more original. So we're not saying don't use these words, but just try and give a few more examples around it. So instead of saying, oh, I'm a team player, we'd prefer to say, so I work well with people and I enjoy working together as a team, just to kind of build it out a little bit more and give us a little bit more into you. The next one I just wanted to go through was your education, training, and employment. So within your CV or when you're making an application, try and list your qualifications and employment in order of the most recent and the most relevant first. For any previous education, give details on your title of your qualification, what you studied, what date you achieved them, and just to include, well, you don't have to include your grades, it's your choice, but just try to make it consistent so it all kind of looks formatted and nice, basically. You can include qualifications you're currently studying. So from my understanding, you're currently at uni. So obviously good to put that, but just make it clear on your CV that you haven't actually gained the degree yet. So for any previous employment, I'm conscious that a few of you may have had some part-time jobs. Just make sure you put your full job title, a little bit of a summary of responsibilities and some start and finish dates, just to kind of give an overview of what you've been up to. And then also when you are talking about your employment, just to make sure you're outlining your responsibilities and duties within that. So employers really want to read about your transferable skills and achievements. So any kind of previous roles that you've had that will make you ideal for the one you're applying for, and what you've done, how you've done it. So don't worry if you don't think your previous experience is actually relevant for the role you're applying for. You can use any previous work history to kind of sell yourself, even if you've done jobs that you feel are irrelevant. So for example, if you've been working behind a bar or in a shop, it will give you the chance to kind of display any leadership skills, team working experience, and any customer service skills as well. So the next bit is the achievements. So I'm conscious a few of you have probably written a CV, but you're probably writing like a rough draft or anything like that. So don't worry if you don't have tons of work experience. We're not expecting you to have loads at all. There are plenty of other ways to kind of show employers why you have the right skills and why you are a good candidate and why you would be a good fit for a role. So always good to include. So if you're in school or college, university, any clubs you were in, any responsibilities you had, if you organised any events, did you hold any meetings? They're all kind of examples of showing good organisational skills, working in a group, having a bit of initiative, which can be good transferable skills into a lot of jobs in the workplace. Also awards, have you taken part in anything like Duke of Edinburgh? It's always good to kind of pop it in there. And then as well, any volunteering, so any local charity jobs or working in an elderly home, anything like that is always a nice add-in to put. So all of these points will just show that you're able to complete tasks, work with any other people, and you're a committed individual, and those points will be really key when an employer is looking at your application. So I've mentioned quite a bit about transferable skills. So I just wanted to highlight, you just need to look at your own skills and strengths and see where you'd fit in within the business. So I'm not sure where you guys will be looking. So whether you'll be looking in to go for marketing or for sales or for our R&D. So we obviously at Unilever have quite a few different functions you could go into, but all of the different functions are quite different in their behaviours, in their strengths, and things like that. So I think the main thing is just to think about where you feel like you're best suited. So say in marketing, it requires a little bit more creativity, communication, and a bit more team management. Whereas if you want to go into sales, it's a bit more to do with your listening and to do with your negotiation skills. So I think the main thing to think about is if you're applying for roles in different departments, try and tailor your CV to what you're applying for. So if you are applying for marketing, try and use a few more examples towards creativity and what you've done towards your time management skills. Whereas if you are applying for more roles within data and analytics, R&D, try and focus a bit more on your problem solving skills and more data driven. So that's always a good point, but obviously make sure you are always honest on your CV as well. So just make sure you are being really clear with what you're saying. So the next, I'll pause there just in case anyone actually has any questions on anything I've went through. Can't see the chat at the moment.
Anybody got a question that they haven't already put in the chat?
Maybe specifically about what we've just covered, because I know there's a lot about fast tracks, which I know is going to be covered a little bit later on by Sam. So
don't worry, there'll be time for more questions at the end. So if you think them, just put them in the chat and I can see the chat. Oh, does Unilever require personal statements on CVs?
Sam, well, in terms of the UFLP applications, I think, Sam, you're probably better on answering that one.
No, for UFLP, well, for our future careers programs, we don't. But Liv, I don't know if you want to add anything just around mid-career recruits and general applications anyway.
So on any mid-career recruits, so that's anyone that won't be coming through a UFLP scheme or anything like that. So if you're going straight into an entry-level job, we do normally ask for a CV, sometimes a cover letter as well. So that kind of will pull through on your application. So yeah, a CV is normally what we ask for.
And just for clarity, when we say UFLP, that means Unilever Future Leaders Programme, and that's our graduate scheme here at Unilever.
Yeah.
There's another question here. What are Unilever's thoughts on creative CVs for marketing roles?
Our marketing managers really like them, is what I've seen anyway. We've had some really cool ones. It really shows that they've got a bit of initiative, and I think it shows that sometimes people will go really specific into Unilever, and it shows that they've really put a lot of effort into the application, and a lot of hiring managers do really like that. I don't know if, Sam, you have any thoughts on that either.
I think Sam is frozen. We'll move on to another question. Is Unilever only looking for CVs, or are you looking for a cover letter as well?
So a cover letter is normally optional in terms of mid-careers, so not the grad schemes. So we ask for a CV as standard, and then sometimes if you get a cover letter, that's kind of additional, but that is your choice as a candidate when you're applying. It's just specific to what you want to do. But those cover letters are always kind of forwarded on, and the hiring managers do kind of appreciate that you've put a bit more effort into your application.
Just two more. How are creative CVs taken into finance? Any tips for making a CV stand out?
So for finance, probably slightly different, just because I think you tend to be slightly less creative in the role that you're normally applying for in finance. I find that finance managers are more likely to look at your qualifications and what you've done in the past and see where that can transfer, rather than a creative CV. I think a creative CV is more beneficial to a marketing role.
And we do have a panel at the end, guys. So we've got a group of current industrial placement students and also graduate students who are here at Unilever, and you can ask them any questions you want about specific roles. There's just the last one on if you have a human resource degree, can you apply for which position? So I think just some clarity on we accept any roles really and any degrees.
Yeah,
and I don't think the degrees there is a slight caveat on that. Okay. So I'll cover that in my section as well.
Perfect. So Sam will cover any caveats we have on roles. Cool. We will carry on, but keep putting your questions in the sidebar and I will ask them at the next pause.
Cool, thank you. So the next part we just wanted to run through was your interview skills. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more preparation for your interviews and just kind of make sure you feel a little bit more prepared when going into them. An interview is, I'd like to think of it as just a conversation between two people. So the interviewer wants to find out a little bit and you need to find out a little bit. So the interviewer wants to determine, can you do the job? Are you the best candidate? Whereas for your side, I think it's also good just to highlight, you need to think about, do I want this role? Is it a job that can offer me the experience I want to gain? And really think of it as a two-way thing, just because sometimes the role isn't always right. So there's a few different types of interviews you can go through. So there's your telephone interview. So that's often just an initial screening before inviting someone for a face-to-face interview. Obviously I say face-to-face interview, that would in the current situation, it's normally over Zoom, over Teams, and whatever the company is using. So these telephone interviews shouldn't really be brushed off as easy at all. Just because the interviewer can't see you doesn't mean that you aren't being judged on how you're coming across. It's actually quite hard to come across in the way you want over the phone. You'll be surprised. So my top kind of thought on this is just to make sure you find a quiet spot, make sure you smile, sit up straight, as it really does convey in your voice when you're not. And it sounds like you're slightly less interested, I'd say, and less engaged in the conversation. So watch out for any rushing. Try not to just fill the silences. Thinking time is okay. In an interview, we don't want you just to babble out whatever you think of it. Really try and think about the questions that you're trying to answer. The next one I have on the slide, it's a face-to-face, but as we know, it's probably a Zoom or a Teams, whatever it is at the moment. So this could be a one-to-one interview or it could be a panel. So in terms of a one-to-one interview, this is just you and one other interviewer. So they'll ask you a few questions that you'll just have to consider and respond to. Make sure you watch your body language in this. Try to avoid crossing your arms and try and maintain eye contact as much as possible. And just try and smile, come across as friendly, but try and remain professional as well. And then in terms of the panel interview, so this could be with you and two or more other interviewers from the employer side. So each interviewer may be wanting to ask different types of questions, as they might just be looking for slightly different things. So make sure you group both interviewers, or however many interviewers there are, smile and keep addressing all of the interviewers regardless of who asked the question. So try and watch out for only talking to one person. If you've been interviewed by a panel, it's because they all want the chance to meet you. So make sure you're really trying keeping in contact and keeping engaged with all of them is my top tip there. And then assessment centre. So these are these are used in our grad schemes and a few other things as well. So these could be an hour, half a day, a whole day. These often include some exercises, some mock trials at the job you'll be doing. Our top kind of thought on this is just to relax and be yourself. They're looking for whether you'd be a good fit. So really just don't try and be someone you're not at all. Watch out for, sometimes you can be asked to do a team activity. Try and watch out for dominating the activity or not taking part at all. The employer will want to see how well you work with others. So by not taking part or taking part too much, it will kind of convey your team working skills. So just try and watch out on that one. So in an interview, I think the common worry is that you'll be asked questions you just don't know the answer to. This obviously can happen, and there are lots of questions we're likely to be asked, but we can prepare for interview questions into a few main categories. So no matter what type of interview or job you're going for, there's a few types of questions you may be asked. So the first, I'll just go through the ones on the slide. So you can get asked some warm-up questions. So they'll be just an initial questions just about you and just about your interest in the role, to be honest. And then there's some competency-based. So a lot of companies do use these. They're just trying to ask you to demonstrate certain competencies. So any problem solving, any decision making, try and have some examples in the back of you, like think about them prior to your interview of any examples that you can use to display any of those skills. And then you have some scenario-based questions. So they'd ask you to consider how you would act in a work situation. So they'll give you an example and they'll say, how would you react to this? And then there's a few which will go onto your CV and skills. So they'll kind of highlight the skills that you've said on your CV and cover letter. So that's why it's always key just to really know what you're writing on your CV, application, cover letter, whatever it is, and really know what you've said. Just because if you aren't honest, you will be caught out in the interview stage. So it's just really key just to know your CV, cover letter, application, back to front, upside down, because they will ask you about it. And if you are caught out on anything, it won't reflect very well for you. And then the last kind of questions you could be asked is values-based. So just these tend to be, I think they're nice, easy questions, and they're just about what you enjoy and what you like doing and a bit more about why you want to be there. So when asking questions, we kind of recommend to use the STAR technique. I'd like to hope a few of you have heard of it. It's commonly used for interviewers just to probe a real example from a candidate, but it's also useful for you as a candidate to use to approach when giving answers. So it just ensures you give the full picture to an interview, because I think it's really easy just to answer a question really quickly and not give the full picture. So you have the situation, which you need to highlight, then the task, action, and then the result. So an example of this, so say you are working at a part-time job. So the situation, you say, I'm working at M&S on a Saturday while I'm at uni. I was really busy, but I enjoyed helping the customers. And then you'd go on to a task. So a customer approached me looking for some chocolate biscuits for a friend, and I needed to help her to find the aisle. And then on the action bit, so this is the main bulk of the answer you normally want to highlight. So you could say, I asked if she knew exactly what kind of biscuits she wanted to buy, and she mentioned they were a small gift. So knowing this, I suggested a new tin of biscuits that we currently had on promotion. And then the result on this, which is also a key bit, is the customer was quite grateful for me showing her to the biscuit aisle. She liked my suggestion of the new tin, saying it was a nicer gift than all the other biscuits I could have offered her. So I think the main success is that the customer's needs were met, and they were met over and above. So rather than just answering an initial question. So as well as using this model, there are a few other important tips to use when answering a question. So just taking a moment to consider what the question is really asking you. An interviewer would far rather you took your time to answer a question carefully than giving a rushed and unclear answer, like I said before. I know it can be quite scary sitting in silence, but as long as you're not pausing for too long, a little bit of silence can make you seem a lot more reflective and just come across a lot better in an interview.
Perfect. Last couple of minutes with Liv, guys. So if you have any more questions for her before she finishes, then fire them away in the chat box.
So next few things are just a few top tips before, during and after an interview. So before an interview, just make sure you get a really good night's sleep and you're just prepared. Make sure you read the job description of the job you're applying for. Really know your CV, like I mentioned before. Make sure you arrive on time. It's amazing what first impressions can do and what a manager can think if you do arrive late to an interview. So always make sure you're prepared and on time. And don't be afraid, I think, before an interview or an assessment centre, of what the process will be and what kind of format it will be. So it's never an issue to ask the recruiter or the team what kind of questions you could be asked or how long it will be, who it will be with. They should know all of that. So it shouldn't be an issue at all for you to ask. And then as well is just to prepare any questions for the end of an interview, just because it's always nice for a manager to kind of feel like you've come prepared and you are really interested in the role. So, and they will always give you time at the end to ask any questions. And then, so during the interview, just a few generic do's and don'ts for if you're in it. So make sure you're polite, you're smiling, you're maintaining some eye contact, good posture. Really take your time and think about the answers and talk in the first person. So rather than saying we, talk about I did this, I did that, rather than a whole team. And then if you don't be negative about your past employer. That comes across really negatively. Don't make salary your first question. This kind of conversation will be had with the recruiter or later on. Don't leave your phone on and don't say anything inappropriate. A few common mistakes within this is, within the general interview would be not answering the question, not being prepared, and then any lack of depth in any answers. So that kind of goes back to the STAR technique and really filling out your answers. And then the last bit, so after an interview, make sure you thank the interviewer for their time. You can email the recruiter if you have their email, or just to let them know that you just really appreciate you taking the time to consider you as a candidate. Make sure you ask feedback, even if you're not successful. It really just shows proactivity. And if you aren't successful, it's always just good to have for future interviews, and you can really reflect on that. And then I think the last thing I just wanted to highlight was an interview is an opportunity for you to see what is right for you, not just the employer. So if you are unsuccessful for this role in particular, it's always good just to get feedback and use as a learning for anything in the future that you're applying for. And then I think that's me. So if anyone has any questions about anything I've went through.
Perfect. So just the last couple of questions before we move on. Can first year students apply for anything?
Sam, I think you're probably best in terms of future careers anyway.
Sorry, what was the question?
Can first years apply for anything, Sam?
Oh, fine. Let's not waste time on that because I'm going to come on to it.
Okay, perfect. And would you recommend notes or prompts to take into an interview?
If you think that you'll be better with notes, then there's no harm in it. I'd probably, if you are going to, I'd say mention it to the recruiter. But to be honest, there's no harm in having notes next to you if you're doing it over Teams. I mean, to be honest, the interviewer probably won't even notice. But I don't think there's any harm in bringing in any notes, no.
Perfect. And last one, would you advise being more professional with the interviewer or a friendly approach is preferable?
So I think the thing is that normally in an interview, it's normally someone you're going to work with. So it's nice to build a relationship, but I think you have to maintain it as quite professional during the interview. But obviously be yourself, be friendly, but yeah, I try and keep it as professional as you can.
Perfect. And then we'll move on to Sam's slides. Thank you so much, Liv.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks Liv. Hello everyone, I am Sam Whitbread, the Future Careers Manager for the UK and I, so I look after all of our different programmes and everything that we do from what we call Future Careers point of view for Unilever. I've just thrown a few pictures on the slide here to show you what my last 6 years at Unilever have been like. There's a few things on there that, as you can see, look like they're great fun, and they always are. A couple of parties, you can see some Diwali there where we're all dressed up. You can see a Vena end of year party. I spent the last 2 years of my 6 in the Netherlands living out there. So you can also see a photo where I'm in a Hellman's apron. That's actually on an overnight stay in a centre park in the Hoek of Holland in the Netherlands. You can also see me dancing on the beach there as well. That was another team day that I ran. That is just outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and some cooking courses as well. And there's a photo at the top there from a trip to Dijon with my mustard. Lots of things that I've done over the 6 years, and I thought that was quite a nice insight as to actually how varied some things can be. Also an interviewing panel in the middle there, and at the bottom is an example of where I've been pushed outside of my comfort zone. I hate improv, and that photo is me leading an improv session for about 70 of our directors and vice presidents for our global Unilever company. So there's a nice overview for you of what I've done over the last 6 years. But I'm going to be talking to you about the next 2 sections of the session. So firstly, what to look for in an internship or grad job, and also how to decide if that's right for you. And I will make that a little bit about Unilever. I'm slightly biased, and after all, it's a Unilever session, so I will go into that a bit. Then I'll also take you through the options and the different placements and opportunities that we have as Unilever as part of our early careers or future careers offering as well. So first slide on this, and it's a building slide, Holly, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit, is I was just thinking about what my answer to that question would be. How do we start thinking about grad job placements? What should we be looking for? So I've got 5 things that I'm going to throw up on this slide, and then I'm going to talk to you about those things for Unilever as well. And I've just got a cat on my desk, so you're going to have to ignore him if you can see a tail going everywhere. The first one is values. I think a lot of companies you'll be able to see very clearly, even if you just go online on their social media, what their values are, what they talk about their values being. And I would just look to see, actually, do the values of this company match up to the values that I hold as an individual? If so, you're probably onto a winner. If not, you're probably not. So that's probably quite a nice way to just be able to sift out those first few companies that you're considering. And culture, I guess, is kind of linked to that as well. And I think you'll be able to see that, again, even just through the things that companies foster, and you'll probably see that on their LinkedIn, what kind of things are they up to as well. So values and culture, I think, probably come up quite high. The third one is support. So when you're looking at those placement opportunities, year in industry opportunities, graduate opportunities, what's the support that you're going to get when you're on those schemes? How is that going to run for you? Fourth is structure. What does the structure of those schemes and programs look like? Are you hopping about the world? Are you hopping about around the UK? Have you got a set training plan for the first 12 weeks, and then you go off into the business, and then you go back to training again? What does that structure look like? And do you think that's for you? I think you'll quite quickly know whether you want to be doing some of those things, or whether you just want to, you don't want to have 12 weeks of training, you just want to get your hands dirty, or vice versa. So the structure I would pay close attention to, because as you well know, no grad scheme is the same. And also, what's the outcome? So after that grad scheme, after that placement, what is the idea around what you're going to achieve at the end of that? What should you be going on to afterwards, and what will the company be helping you to go on to as well? As I said, I'm Unilever, I'm biased. I'm going to make this sound not too much like a sales pitch, but instead show you the type of things that you could then look into from a Unilever point of view to see actually does this add up. So starting with the whole values and culture piece, this slide on the screen here just also will give you a little bit of background into Unilever. So actually, it was in 1885, so a very long time ago now, that Unilever in some sense was founded by William Lever. That's where we get the Unilever part. And he started up his own business making Sunlight soap. He was a social entrepreneur, and he could see how selling low-cost branded soap at a time when things like cholera were going mad in Victorian slums could actually improve people's lives and grow his business at the same time. And essentially, he brought hygiene to millions of people who didn't even know about the existence of germs or why hygiene was important. And he did that by setting his company a really inspiring purpose. That's what you can see on the slide: make cleanliness commonplace. And he was actually, I think, the first person, it was the first company to ever use marketing or branding on any kind of product. So we really are kind of the founders of even that whole world that we see today. And he used advertising to get that cleanliness to become the norm as well. And I mean, you can see how even today in a COVID world, this is so at the heart of what we're doing and what we do. And of course, since then, it's been a long time since then. We're now a global company. We have a turnover of 52 billion. This was last year. Sales in nearly every country around the world. You can see some of the breakdowns on the slide there. And we also make many of the world's favorite brands. This is on the next slide, Holly. So a fun stat for you: 2.5 billion people, I'm going to repeat that, 2.5 billion people use Unilever products every day. Every day. That always just, I can't fathom that number of people, but that's what we're talking about here. So this is us. I'm sure you know who Unilever are. And we know that today Unilever and the world face bigger and new challenges all the time. Holly, next slide. And I've got a whole list of things that I could read to you about. You know, 1 in 10 adults in the world is obese, and almost 1 million people go hungry at the same time. There's more than 2 million children that die each year from preventable diarrheal disease. I've got a whole list, but even looking at 2020 and everything that's hit us this year, I don't need to tell you that we face bigger and new challenges every day. So we as Unilever, our purpose is very clear, is to make sustainable living commonplace. Slightly different to what we had in 1885, but still along the same lines. We are aiming to make sustainable living commonplace. And we believe it's the best way to ensure long-term growth as well. And I promise I won't talk too much through all of this, but the next slide shows you actually how we try to get there. And this, if you ask anyone at Unilever, how do we work? They will tell you our compass. Our compass is what guides us. And this is where I'm trying to think about, you know, look at what a company's values are, think about what your values are. So actually, you probably have a good idea of what your own internal and personal compass is. And it should be very easy to then sum up and weigh up alongside what a company's trying to do. You're probably not going to go and want to work for a tobacco company if you're all about trying to make people's lives a bit of a better place. So that's the kind of thing to be thinking about. And as I said, for Unilever, we work against this compass that sort of leads our purpose. This is our values, really. So we aspire to be purpose-led and future fit, and you can see how we do that with kind of our company as Unilever, our brands, and also with our people. So you might know that some of the brands that we have will have very clear purposes, thinking of Ben & Jerry's and everything that they're doing for climate change and social justice and everything linked to that. Think about Dove and female empowerment. Think about all of these brands that we own, and I bet you can find some kind of purpose or idea behind why they want to do things and why they're trying to make the world a better place and how they're doing that as well. And we do that through everyone. And as you can see on the bottom here, it's also people with purpose thrive. We put so many of our Unilever employees through a purpose workshop, trying to find what drives them, trying to find their own purpose. And it means that every single person working at Unilever has a tagline, and that is what their purpose is. So mine is 3 words, and it's to colour code lives. I love colour coding. I love helping people. I help people through colour coding. That's my purpose. And everyone will have that, and they're all slightly different. But that to me is also the culture part. it feels very much like we're just this one big family with very common interests. We're all driving this goal. And that means that we kind of have the culture that matches up to those values as well. And then coming on to support, as I mentioned, what I've got on the screen is just an example of the support that our graduates receive. So our UFLP, as Holly mentioned earlier. So actually, if you join the graduate programme, you've got 5 different people that are kind of looking out for you and supporting you throughout your programme. The first is the Future Careers team. It's not one person, but that's my team, everyone that works with me. We have your best interests at heart. You also will have an HR lead and a functional lead per function. So these are people in the business, in HR, that look after marketing, for example, if you want to apply for marketing. You'll also have a rotational line manager. So you might move and do different rotations and different roles within the graduate programme. For every role that you have, you'll have a different line manager. And because you have a different line manager for every role that you have one consistent career sponsor. This person stays with you from day one or even day minus 2 weeks, because they'll call you before you start, and they will be with you right until you move off into a role afterwards and even beyond. So you've kind of got this whole support structure. And this is another question for you to ask: is that too much for me? Do I need a little bit more hands off of that, or is this exactly what I need? And you should again be able to find these kind of things online on other people's on other company websites as well. But just thinking about, what support do I need? And then the last piece on, the last 2 pieces around structure and outcomes. This is very graduate specific. So our graduate programme is 3 years, and this is the structure. As I said, I love colour coding. So here it is in action. I tried to put this slide together to show that actually every function that you apply to has a different structure that they put into place. And this is kind of trying to summarise that in a visual way. I hope it's not too off-putting and too colourful. But what it's showing you is that actually, if you're to join a marketing role, over those 3 years, you'll have 3 one-year placements. So you'll move every 12 months. And one of those will be in customer development as well, just to give you a rounded idea and a rounded view. If you join in technology management, you're actually going to be moving 6 times within those 3 years, and you'll be having 6-month placements and jumping between those as well. And actually, any one of these placements that you go into could be at any of our locations in the UK. And even if you really want to, and if there's an opportunity, it can be abroad as well. So this is kind of one thing to think about, is actually, depending on the function or any function, there will be a fair bit of change throughout your 3 years, and you could be asked with a month's or 2 months notice to move from our London head office to our Liverpool office. You could then be asked to go down to Bristol and work in the Pucker Herb House. You're going to have to get used to some kind of changes and be a bit comfortable with that. And again, some people might look at that and think, nope, I just need to stay in one place for one time. Or they might have different commitments that are keeping them in one place, and this might not be right for them. For others, and Holly is on our graduate stream at the moment, and she's here like, yes, I'm ready. Where am I going to next? Get me there. So this is another thing to think about as well from a structure point of view. What am I comfortable with, and what do I want to do? And don't get me wrong, we also give you support for moving. We give you days off. We give you support for hunting for houses. We give you guides on where's best to live. We give you a £5,000 loan to go and move. We support you on that. It's not just drop you in the deep end, but just think about whether that structure is right for you. And then in terms of outcome, so from our industrial placement and our summer placement programs, you have the opportunity to be fast-tracked onto the graduate program Discovery Centre. If you've been with us for those 12 weeks or those 12 months and you've really impressed your functional lead and your line manager, they can fast track you through to the Graduate Discovery Centre, which means that you don't have any of those kind of first few stages that I'll come on to in the next section. So that's kind of a fast track opportunity. And then the aim for the UFLP, the clue is in the name. It's the Unilever Future Leaders Programme. The idea is that after those 3 years, you roll off scheme and you move into a managerial leadership role. So again, what is it that you're looking for at the end of any programme that you join? Is that again aligned to what you want to do? Or actually, do you not want to stay with one company for that long and maybe Unilever isn't for you? Or actually, if you do, then stick with us and we'll fast track you to the top. That is the first section of my of my slides. I believe
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. So I think what we'll do is, just to accommodate everybody having questions, rather than taking a tea break, if it's all right with everybody, I'll just go through the questions to make sure you all get ample time and we answer as many as possible.
Although, I will say, a lot of the questions I can see coming in, I'm actually going to answer in my next section.
Perfect.
So whether I just go straight into that.
Let's do that.
So a lot of the questions, and then we can just look at any that I haven't answered.
Perfect. So keep the questions coming, guys. I can't reply to all of them, but I'm writing them down and I will ask them to Sam if they haven't been covered. Okay, so we have lots of time, and we also have a panel at the end where we've got loads of current industrial placement students and also UFLPs, and they're going to be able to answer all your questions about how they found it, guidance for applying, and all that sort of jazz. So keep your questions coming. I am writing them down, I promise.
Perfect. And Holly, when do you want me to stop? How long have I got?
You've got until about the hour-ish, I would say, 5 past, and then we'll do questions in the panel.
Okay, fine. I will